Welcome home, all. We are on the Wednesday. And listen, thank you guys for being here. After last week, I mentioned or said to you that we would not be up on the Tuesday. Instead, we'd be doing Wednesday, Thursday for this week. And then, as far as I know, from now on going forward, we will be back to the Tuesday, Thursday. And for the record, if those of you that have been with me for a while are asking, like, well, why is it once in a while? Sometimes you have to change. It's not my facility. We do it at a place called CMAC. You can see that at the end. It's called the Community Media Access Collaborative. It's a nonprofit in Fresno that is literally designed and set up to help content and information get out through streams and media and social media. And it's an awesome thing that they do. And I'm glad to be here because again, they do it for all the right reasons. And it is a nonprofit. They're not just trying to make money off people. They're literally trying to get more information out to the public regarding topics, everything ranging from governmental to entertainment, et cetera. And I really think it's a good thing that they're doing. So I've never really said anything about it, but I'm going to plug them now. It's called CMAC, the Community Media Access Collaborative here in Fresno. And my point to bringing it up was, so it's not my facility. It's not my business. We have to schedule, and we can't just like black out, the whole year in advance. I think it's like on a monthly basis, and you have to go. And sometimes somebody might scoot in before you get your slotted time, right? And so we have to schedule that in advance. And if there's a window where we miss, that next opening, we could lose our normal Tuesday or a Thursday, right? Aside from the Thursdays that I've mentioned to you in the past, that I'm doing the Central California Veterans Day Parade Committee meetings. So anyway, so that's a little bit for those of you guys that are my regulars, those that watch consistently. If I'm up or not on, well, I'm pretty blunt and easy about that. If it's something to do with me, like personally, and I can't, I'll say so. I don't hide anything, and I don't got nothing to hide that way. If it has to do with like facility or use of facilities, CMAC, then I'll say, just we couldn't get it scheduled, and I'm not saying that I like that, but once in a while that may take place. We do as much as we can to make sure that it doesn't, so that I can stay, Supermex can stay as consistent with you in the show as possible with regard to our times that were slotted, the 6:30s on the Tuesdays and the Thursdays. Okay, so that's the gist of it. For those of you that wonder, like, why once in a while is it going to be on a different day? And I know that I'm asking a lot for you to be here. I was just reminded of something today I was watching, and I watched a host of a show, and it is basically kind of saying some of the things that I say that I believe, but I like the way she said it in particular. But basically she was going on about being thankful for the people that give their time to view, watch, listen, our content, our show. This show in particular, Supermex Nation, because as this young lady mentioned and fleshed out, it is asking a lot, in some ways, to ask people of their time, because in today's world, society, it's hard to keep anybody's attention for more than a few minutes. It really is. If you look at social media patterns, algorithmic expression, algorithmic research on patterns and interests of people that are on social media platforms, the whole point to it is that you've got to capture that attention right away, real quick, or you're going to lose people. Now, I've got some misgivings about that. I think I've shared that on air and with people, that is not good collectively as a whole for society. I'm aware of it. I'm acknowledging it. I know that I have to be better about it, but I don't have to like it either. I don't have to agree with it. I don't like the fact that we have people that, and I'm not saying everybody, but a lot, with the attention spans of a gnat sometimes. Literally, on a device, flicking through things. If you don't see what you like immediately, you go to the next. There's no possibility of a deeper comprehension or understanding on a topic if it doesn't capture your attention within the first second. That's not good for us as a species, societally. It really isn't. Lack of attention span moves and diverges away from comprehensive understanding of topics and issues. That's just fact. And so for those of you that watch my show and pay attention, that's why I say it's a show for the thinking Mexican. It's the show for the thinking American to watch my show, because I require you to pay attention and listen and stay engaged and stay focused. And again, my point to all of it is I'm appreciative of those of you that keep coming back. I'm appreciative of those that we do have, our small number of people that keep coming back and watching and listening to our show, because we do tackle and go over and cover heavy material. And for the record, and I'll just say it, and I don't think I've ever said this since we started back on at the end of this past year, I don't see a whole lot of Mexican Americans speaking to complex, difficult foreign policy, force posture, foreign relation matters on a consistent basis daily or even weekly, because it just isn't there. If there is someone, please let me know. I wouldn't mind. I don't mind competition. I like competition. I like seeing what others are doing. But as you can imagine, watch any of the news stations or all news channels, not a whole lot of Mexicans and Mexican Americans on as guests and panelists and experts. I'll tell you that there are people that have expertise in these areas that are Mexican American, but you don't see them on air. I can't change that, at least that. I have an inkling and an understanding of, I think, why. But I can do my part in this capacity. So again, back to the earlier, I'm trying to do my part, and I'm telling you that there aren't a whole lot of Mexican Americans that speak with any kind of authority or expertise or background or understanding on foreign policy, foreign relations, force posture, our nation's military, etc., with some understandable degree of, if not expertise, then at least a good handle on those issues and topics. And I think I've said on air more than a few times, I don't talk about things that I do not know or understand. I just don't do it. The things that I bring up that I choose to elaborate on this show, Supermax Nation, are things that I have in my wheelhouse because I've either had background in them or done things with them or have read extensively and keep myself extremely engaged and updated and informed intellectually on these topics. Okay. So anyway, so moving on, let's get down to the skinny here. So the Trumpstein Quagmire, I'm saying it again because it is a bona fide, all evidence points to, and easily in your face, on the plate, right in front of you, Quagmire. It is point blank. That is what it is. It's mushroomed and become more of a problem, the war itself, and more problems in general from emanating and originating from this war. And I think I had a little bit of a funny last week when I was articulating to you guys, my audience, viewers, etc., that I was articulating the amount of countries and the amount of new fronts in areas that now we have to cover, expending and using our resources and our personnel, our men and women in uniform. And it's becoming dispersed and wider. I learned real early on, and this wasn't even in the Army, by the way. I learned this early on in my studies as a young guy, as a kid, reading, on Alexander, reading Xenophon's Anabasis, reading, a variety of different military personnel throughout history and their engagements. Yeah, Sun Tzu, of course, read that a bunch of times. But one thing that I was that understanding of, even as a young guy, as a young person, before I even went to the Army, was its common sense, common knowledge, and smart practice, if not smart policy, to not engage and not be embroiled in wars or in engagements or conflicts or battles on multiple fronts. Okay? I'll break it down even more simply for the way I grew up and the people that I was around growing up. If you're going to go to the alley and throw chingazos with some dude, you want to go throwing with just the guy. You don't want to go to that alley. Now you're throwing chingazos with 3 or 4 guys because you're going to get your ass whooped, most likely. Get it? So if you're an army, again, it's common sense and common practice, if not common policy, to do everything you can to not be engaged or not to engage and become embroiled in multiple fronts, meaning multiple engagements, different locations, because it disperses and diminishes your capability as a military force. If I have to send troops, if I have to engage and fight in Jordan, in Egypt, in Yemen, in Iran itself, in other parts of Syria, or any other location in the Middle East, I'm having to expend time, energy, effort, resources, and men and women. And that diffuses and diminishes your capability as a force. I don't give a damn if you're the biggest and most powerful army on the planet. We are, ladies and gentlemen. But even the most brilliant and militarily capable force on the planet the world has ever seen cannot just keep expending rounds, shooting rounds, and sending people all over the place. There's a finite amount of time, energy, effort, resources, money to pay for these things, let alone human cost. Okay? So my point in telling you that is this is a quagmire. We are engaged and involved in multiple fronts in multiple countries throughout the Middle East, not just Iran. Heaven forbid it was just the damn Strait of Hormuz anymore. If it was just that, yeah, we were probably fine. Okay, good. Because we can focus. And you don't have to be a former military person or a veteran to understand this, ladies and gentlemen. It's simple and it's common sense. There's not complication here. If all we had to do as a country, as a people, as a force, as a military, was worry about engagements in an activity in the Strait of Hormuz and keeping it open so that oil can flow in and out so the world's economy runs normal, not abnormal, abnormal like Donald Trump, who started the damn mess, then it would be easier, okay? Easier than what it has become now. I.e., it is a quagmire. It is that simple. It is literally a pain in the ass for our military and our people in uniform, okay? And to a degree, a large degree, it's a pain in the ass for our country, which is going to be kind of the genesis, or excuse me, not the genesis, but the core of today's show as we run through this, okay? So I mentioned last week that it is escalating. It is engulfing or including us in other countries now. And every time that happens, I mentioned and I said that those countries, they're not coming to bitch and complain to us because it's a positive thing that their country got hit or a base in Jordan got hit, our base, but it's in their country. It's not a benefit or a positive that there are drone strikes in Egypt, as I mentioned last week, and other military activities throughout the region that now we're responsible for, because those other countries are looking to us to shoulder the burden and handle this and take care of it, meaning we have to expend more time, energy, effort, money, and people. So it is a quagmire. Absolutely. Irrevocably and without any debate or argument, it is a quagmire, okay? The Trumpstein quagmire. Second part to that opening statement on our title tonight is that this happens to be and is currently now the most disapproved war in American history, in U.S. history, as of today, as of now. And for the record, and as a reminder, I've said openly more than a few times, I'm skeptical and cautious when it comes to polling, because I'm very well aware on the political side that polling can be skewed and manipulated to benefit or to harm, one way or the other, depending on your needs and your uses individually in terms of what you want to get out of the data from these polls. However, excuse me, some things are not that complicated. Some things are raw and simple. They don't have to be skewed. They can just be taken on the face, quite literally, just for what it is. And we're going to go over that a little bit tonight. I'm going to give you some data because I like giving you meat and potatoes in addition to a commentary or a thought or an opinion. Give you data. And you do with it as you choose. I'll tell you what I think about it, but then it's up to you to decide if you feel I'm right or if you're with me or not. And if you're not, then by all means, comment in the comment section. And as always, keep it clean and be lucid and to the point without any games or garbage, right? Articulate your point. And maybe you have an opinion or a mindset that maybe illuminates something for me that I didn't see. And that's always good too, by the way. I did mention once, not too long ago, that in the classroom as a teacher, as an instructor, I love teaching. And I really, really loved when a kid came up with a question from some of my lecture or my material that I did not see. But because they were younger and they saw things differently, they asked a question that I didn't get. And I learned something. That's always good. Okay, so it is the most disapproved war. I'm going to break this up into two sections and stay with me. This is really, really important. The concept or the understanding of polling, people going out, someone going out into the populace, into our public, into society, and asking Americans how they feel, what they think, a question, and then getting an answer and pulling an answer out of them that gives you some information, some intelligence to marry with and to couple or to put together with others answering those same questions. And now we have a data set, right? Like I asked 10 people this question, 7 of them said this, 3 said the other, right? Yes or no or whatever. And obviously the more simply put the polling question is, and the less nuanced it is, the more likely you are to get a good answer and to have a complete or a better data set, meaning the answers in your data will be more true because they were able to answer them more clearly and simply, okay? So you've got to go back, decades, well back. So I would say we couldn't really, I'll leave out like World War I and World War II and leave it for after that, and probably not even the Korean War. I mean, I'm sure somebody can correct me here a little bit if you're really, a savant when it comes to polling and polling data and the inception of polling and the history of polling as a political method. Okay, I'm not an expert on that, but I'm basically going off of at least probably from Vietnam to now. So at least back to Vietnam, when you did have people that went out in the public and asked questions of everyday Americans as to what they felt about the war in Vietnam. And then they gave their opinion. That's polling. That's polling. It may not have been then as sophisticated, as detailed, and as much of an industry as today. By far, no. It is an industry now. But that was a time when people, reporters and journalists went out and asked people questions about what they thought about like the Vietnam War, right? And they got answers and they put those answers together and they kind of came up with a data set and they said, this is what America believes. This percentage of America believes this percentage does not. All right. So I'm going to go back to that because I don't think World War I for sure. And even to a degree, World War II, even if there were those questions put to people that way from journalists, there wasn't much, or at least not a significant number or percentage of division about World War II. Okay. It was generally understood, rightly so, historically factual for us, by the way, historically proven to be true, that Hitler, fascism, the Japanese Empire, because we were attacked directly, that made it simple too. We were attacked. People were killed. Americans were killed on our soil. We understood that was not good. So you didn't have as much of a need to go ask Americans, do you approve of the World War II? They didn't really call it that at that point, but do you approve of this war or do you not approve of this war, right? It wasn't the need. It wasn't a necessity. So you move forward again to Vietnam, and then you start getting that. So I break it up into two windows. One window, you can say the modern era, modern times, and I run that back. And again, if you're really, really a savant and an expert on that area, please feel free to correct me and add into the comments and correct me. But that's kind of where I'm going, like as an historian. I want to say Vietnam was that time where people started to question openly why we're there, what we're doing. I don't approve of this war. My son just went, and I don't know why the hell he went. Get it? That didn't happen, or at least not the same as World War II and World War I and everything before that, because there wasn't that type of journalism and polling prior. Okay, so that's why I say there's two windows, and I'm going to break that. I'm going to digress for 1 second. Please stay with me. Again, stay with me. Again, this is not easy, but very important. Stay with me. Show for the thinking Mexican, show for the thinking American. If there's an argument by anyone, not just the Trump cult members, if there's an argument by anyone that this isn't the most disapproved war in American history, then logically you have to lead to or go to really the only one that we can say, even without polling, because it was a long time ago before polling, that we can say was not good or that we didn't want or that people were divided. And it's simple, okay? The Civil War. The Civil War. Because it was uniformly understood to be not good, a bad thing. We understand that now, historically, past tense, right? The Civil War was not good. It divided the country, it literally divided the country. But there was not polling that way. So again, I'm saying if there's a legitimate argument or reason to raise that issue or that war in particular, then here's where I go with it. Yes, the country was divided, but other than the South that wanted to secede and form their own country, the people of the United States, the Union, were really, really behind President Lincoln and the preservation of the Union. Now, I'm sure there are some that had misgivings. I don't want to fight with our friends and neighbors and our family members, right? Get it. But the Civil War is quite literally its very own unique anomaly in American history as a whole for our 250-year window of time that we've existed as a nation, as a people, okay? It is unique. It is an anomaly. It is different. There has never been anything like it, and there never was prior, okay? And there was no polling data, okay? So that's why I keep that in its own little special bucket prior to polling. So let's fast forward. And again, if you want to have that argument about war, or excuse me, the Civil War, it's not a novel argument, but it's a good argument to have. I would love to talk to people about that, how they feel in terms of what they think approval or polling would have been like. You know, we're getting kind of in the weeds here, and I want to move on. But you get my point. I wouldn't mind having that conversation with somebody. It's a fair conversation. Okay, so let's put that to the side. That window prior to Vietnam, and now you understand me laying the groundwork for what's coming. Okay, modern era from Vietnam, the Vietnam War up until now. We do have journalism. We have journalists. We have polling. We have polling data. We have polling institutions that literally do this nonstop, year-round, all the time. It is their whole reason for existence. And in that time, since Vietnam up until now, this war is unique in its disapproval. And now, let's get down to some meat. And this is from a piece an article I really liked, kind of set this one out in Newsweek. So nearly 5 months into the war with Iran, Donald Trump is presiding over a conflict that polls worse than any modern American war did at a comparable stage, according to a review of decades of survey data. And those decades extend back to Vietnam. Okay? And every war since then. And for the record, I was not alive or born when Vietnam started. I was born during the Vietnam War and our finish to it. Okay, so I wouldn't be old enough. And I'm not trying to be an expert on it. I've had uncles and family members that did serve in Vietnam, okay, for the record. But not there. At that time, I wasn't alive. So going back to that time, a decades review of survey data. The pattern is not the familiar one. Public support for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, the wars that most of us would know more about, being more current over the last 20 years, started high. Again, public support for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq started high and fell over years as they took place and as we were more committed to those wars in those two respective countries, Afghanistan and Iraq. And I have to mention, and I've said before, most of you do know, my son did serve his tour, and he pulled a tour in Iraq. So I do have that relevance too. Wasn't me. My time was done prior. He was in. So yes, I've had family members all over wars throughout my family's history. Okay. So public support for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq by data and survey and polling and Iraq started high and they fell over years as the conflicts continued. Support for the Iran war, and here's the key, and stay with me, my viewer, my listener. Don't forget this, internalize it, sear it into your memory right now. Support for the Iran war, this current Trumpstein war, started low, and rarely do we have a war where we start low. Started low and has stayed there low. And I'm laughing in a way that is not positive because the lunacy, idiocy, ridiculousness of it, the stupidity of it is staggering to the point where you almost have to laugh about it to keep some form of sanity. Support for the Iran, I'm going to reiterate that point. Support for the Iran war started low and has stayed there throughout these 150, 60, 70 days, 6 months, roughly. Gallup, a poll that most people know and credible, found a survey conducted June 1 to 15, about 93 days into the conflict, that 34% of Americans approved of the U.S. military action against Iran. Let's put a pin on that and be really, really specific. Hard. Another point for you, Supermax Nation listener, viewer, watcher, subscriber, follower, Supermax Nation badass. "34% of Americans approved of the U.S. military action in Iran." That is 1 in every 3 Americans. Okay? 1/3. 1/3. 2/3. 66%. 66%. Not just a majority, but a large and an overwhelming majority of Americans do not approve of this war, have not approved of this war. Since day one, when Donald Trump started the war and said we won it on day one. And you would think that if we won the war on day one, then it would probably be a positive, right? No, because he lied and everybody knows it, and it has only continued to tank. 66% of Americans started not approving of this war, and it has not gotten up. It has not gone up. And I've said on this show multiple times, it can only get worse. Ladies and gentlemen, I reiterate the point that I made last week. I stated to you months ago that it can only get worse, and it indeed has gotten worse. It is worse. So I am correct, and it is true. Things that I said months ago, not because I have a crystal ball, because this is not that complicated and difficult to understand. And yes, I've spent a lifetime studying, reading, learning about the United States, its foreign policy, our military, and our activity throughout the world. I've literally spent a lifetime reading, studying, learning, knowing those things. So that's a help. That's a positive. It's a plus. I use history as my backdrop for making good, calculated decisions and comments on this show. And I stated that it can only get worse. And I absolutely 100% believe it because, ladies and gentlemen, it has in fact gotten worse. At a nearly identical point in the 2011 Libya campaign, 95 days in, Gallup found 39% approval. At 260 days into the Iraq war, Gallup found 60% approval. The gap at the outset is wider still. Gallup recorded 90% approval of military action in Afghanistan on the day the strikes began in October. Again, started high. 76% approval of the decision to go to war in Iraq the day after the invasion in 2003. Iraq started high, 76%, 90%. A Q poll, Quinnipiac, in early March of 2026 found that only 40% of registered voters supported the action against Iran, while 53% opposed. Again, the point being is that at no time in the history of this Trumpstein war has there ever been a majority of America that has approved of this war. Never. And that's not going to change. It's only going to get worse. An analysis by the New York Times in the war's opening days found 41% initial support, recorded in a CNN poll, was the lowest on record for the start of any American military action in history. I'll read that again. An analysis by the New York Times in the war's opening days found 41% had initial support in a CNN poll. And that 41% on the day, on the opening of this Iran war with the Trumpstein rationale and want to fight, 41% was the high point at the beginning. And I'm going to put a pin on this one here for a second. It was the lowest on record for the start of any military American action ever. Ever. Now watch this. And I'm going to tell you why it was even at 41%. That was the high. And I'm going to tell you why the only reason that it was that high is because the only legitimate, rational argument that the traitor Donald Trump has made and that his administration has tippy-toed around and used as a reason or rationale for going to war. Because again, I've said multiple times, there were a bunch of different reasons. None of them all made sense. They just threw you know what at the wall and expected it to stick. But the reason that some of America, 41% of it, and we do know like maybe 30% of that 41 is probably just Trump cult members that will just literally, I mean, I've said it before, he'll feed you a shit taco and you will literally ask him for some salsa, some hot sauce on it. But that other small percentage, that 5 to 10%, they're conservative, they're Republican, or some combination thereof. They're to the right. Maybe they're former military that believe in military action. I'm kind of that to a degree. Common sense anyway. But the only reason that it could be at 41%, and this is the rationale for it, and as I say it, you will know it. You are the thinking Mexican, the thinking American that watches Super Mex Nation. The only reason that it could have gotten anywhere near to 41% of America is the argument that Iran with the nuclear weapon is not good for the rest of the world or us in general. Full stop, drop it, do whatever you got to do. But that is the only legitimate argument. That is the only rational argument. That is the only statement that could actually make sense. And that is the only reason why this war, this Trumpstein war, actually got to 41%, a minority of America. Because if it weren't for that argument, that number would be even lower. And lo and behold, stay with me, lo and behold, that number is no longer at 41%. It is in the low 30s now. So that 5 to 10% that I just mentioned a few minutes prior, that 5 to 10% of America that isn't necessarily 100% in the Trump cult, they don't believe he's God. They're just Republican or conservative or to the right or some combination thereof. They're falling away from belief in this war because maybe he hooked them, maybe he got them, maybe he conned them, because he cons a lot of people. Not this one, by the way. Not my people, not my Supermax Nation members. We didn't get conned. We saw this garbage for what it was, early and up front. But maybe, just maybe, 5 to 10% of America wanted to believe that acting against Iran, bombing women and children, killing innocents, is justified if we can make sure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. And as I say that to you, my audience, you're sitting there like, wow, that's pretty good. It is good, ladies and gentlemen. It is good because it's true. It's true. I think Iran with the nuclear weapon is dangerous for the rest of the world and us. You rationally probably would say the same. If not, then choose to disagree, and that's good. That's fair, and I'll accept that, and I'm fine. But most Americans would say that. And this has nothing to do with a political party or a belief or being in a cult. There are countries out there, Iran obviously included, but there are countries out there that if they had a nuclear weapon, you would worry, you would wonder, you would be scared of what they're going to do with that nuclear weapon because they don't give a damn about anybody but themselves, or they want to grease us, they want to take us out, whatever. That's the only fair, legitimate, logical, intellectually honest argument that there is. And now, the coup de grace. As I say that it is the only logical argument, it is the only reason that I might be able to want to even believe in that, and I don't, is that 5 to 10% over this 5-6 month window that we've been in this on again, off again, stupid war, idiots war, is that Iran still has the same nuclear capability. If not, we haven't erased their nuclear capability or their desire to acquire a nuclear weapon. They're still there. They're still doing the same thing. We bombed the hell out of them. We've killed women and children. We've killed civilians, but they're still there. And we have not eliminated their ability or want to acquire a nuclear capability. And so now you understand why that approval, this Iran war, Trumpstein war approval rating is lower than the 41% than when we went in, because they promised and he made the argument that it was to make sure they don't have a nuclear weapon. And now we see that argument was bullshit. That argument was a lie. Personally, I really don't think he gives a shit about whether they have a nuclear weapon or not. He cares about what it looks like for himself. That's what I believe. And more Americans are believing that as well. Because from the high point at the beginning of this war, 41%, and some other metrics might have it plus or minus a point or two, we're now in the low 30s. More Americans have figured out this has been a big pile of bullshit the entire time. And that we're spending time, energy, effort, money, resources, and our men and women in uniform, our young people, for a rationale that does not exist. Does not. The numbers have not improved since that opening window. A Washington Post Ipsos, another polling. I'm giving you a whole bunch of polling organizations and giving you the numbers. The numbers have not improved. And for the record, this article on Newsweek was just a few days old. So all the polling data is about as current as you can get. The Washington Post Ipsos poll conducted July 8 to 13, found 29% approved of Trump's handling of the Iran war. That's the handling. Like, how is he handling the war? 29%. It's even worse than the approval because people understand he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's not a wartime leader. He's not a commander. I'll stop there because I can go on about what he is. 68% said the war was not worth fighting. 68, nearly 70% of Americans, 7 out of 10 Americans said that this war was not worth fighting. Money, time, energy, effort, resources, young men and women. That is not worth that. The 40-point gap into people that believe this war is worth fighting and not is as wide as the worst reading Washington Post ABC Ipsos poll recorded in Afghanistan in 2013, nearly 12 years into that war, when 67% called it not worth fighting the Afghanistan war. 28% said it was. The most striking difference is the absence of the effect political scientists call rallying round the flag. That is as simple as it sounds. Meaning, if the United States goes to war, you want to be patriotic and love your country and you want to support. That's a reflexive, inherent thing with people in this country because we generally believe that if we're going to war, there's a good reason for it. But again, as it states, the striking difference is the absence of the effect political sciences call rallying around the flag. Because he's not getting a rally around the flag bump in polls. Whereas every other war, every other president has. George W. Bush's job approval rating stood at 51% on September 2nd or 10th, 2001. It reached 90% within 2 weeks and was still at 87% in late November after September 11th. We rallied around the flag. Now, I was not a big fan of George W. Bush. I never liked the whole son of a former president thing. I have never liked that. Going back to the beginning of this country, I don't think it's a good recipe to just give the job to someone because they're someone's son. Okay? Not a big fan. But when September 11th happened, 2001, I will say to a degree that I, yes, rallied around the flag. I even for a second, and I don't know if I've ever said this on air, but for a second, for a day, I actually considered wanting to go back in, even though I had been out for not quite a decade. I was teaching at the time. I loved what I was doing with the students that I taught. I had a son and a daughter, new, young, and that principally caused me to not go that road and think that way anymore because my time had gone and I was responsible to other people, a wife and 2 kids, and a world that I was building with young people, teaching them about our nation's history. So I did not. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that I really, really thought about wanting to go back in because I didn't serve this country to not be there when it needed defense. My family has done that for generations, nearly 100 years. And I wanted to do the same, even after I already had done my time and spent time. Point is, you rally around the flag because if your country needs you, you want to support it. George W. Bush got that bump. Trump's approval was 40% in a Reuters Ipsos poll taken at the end of February 2026 before the strike started. It fell to 36% by late March, a low for his second term. It has continued to plummet. Americans are figuring it out. Now, I'll be clear. I don't want to go too much further here because this is a lot of meat and potatoes, but there's not much further you can go in terms of low if you're Trump. Read that however you want because there's a lot of application to that statement. Damn, I'm good. Trump can't go much lower. And the joke, I guess, is he often finds a way to go lower. And I think if you're getting the insinuation and the references, clearly I'm referring to more than just this war. Yeah. It is within his capability and purview to go even lower. He is a low form of life. So I would imagine there are things he could do that are lower and worse than what he is currently doing and what he has already done. You and I don't know that, but I'm sure we're going to find out. My point overall, in keeping with the gist of the conversation that we're having here, and the point to all of it is, it's not possible to go a lot lower in polling and approval than what he is at now. This is the lowest for any war in American history, as per the title for tonight. And by extension, and as a result of, this is the worst polling and this is the worst approval, job-wise, and military handling approval of any president in U.S. history. So it can't go much lower. It is possible that it can go up a little bit. I can tell you right now, they've been playing games with the market. They've been playing games with this garbage excuse for pantomime negotiations, kabuki negotiations, on again, off again. Let's pretend we're actually going to do something, but we're really not. Let's make the market fluctuate. Let's see oil prices go up and then go back down. Let's buy stocks or dump stocks, depending on what we're going to do today in our foreign policy. That's all going on right now. So no, I don't believe any of it. I don't trust any of it. But to my point, if he came out tomorrow and announced that there is a deal, there is a negotiation, and it is going to get done, and we're going to get out of this war, we're going to send our kids home, then the approval might actually go up a little bit. Not a lot, mind you, because there is a ceiling to this. It started at 41. So I doubt very highly that Donald Trump's approval and this Iran-Trumpstein war approval is not going to go above 41%, because history dictates and shows us that it never goes higher than what it was at the beginning. And ladies and gentlemen, that is not going to happen here. The same. As I've said to you before, I'm not a prognosticator. I don't have a Supermax crystal ball. I quite literally use data, evidence, and the history that is available to all of us for us to read, to know, to understand, and to use as your data set when you drive your decisions and your thoughts as to what something is. Okay? Not going to, I think we're going to be, I think we'll be done there. I think we're done there. Good. Again, I'm getting to the point where, like I said, I want to do 50 to 45, no more than that. An item or two, hard, data-driven, factual, in your face, true, for my listener, for my viewer, for my watcher, my subscriber, my friend and family. You have material. I am arming you with data and facts to filter through the information that you intake during a day from other sources that might not be factual, that might be lies, or might be trying to skew you one way, might be trying to bullshit you into believing something that is not true, or believing something that is what they want you to believe. Okay? So you got plenty tonight. We will be back on tomorrow, Thursday, to close out the week. And I may have, like I said, we're finishing up. We've finished up the summer. We're out of the summer. I mentioned that a couple times prior, but we're out of the summer, get into the fall. We may have a little announcement, nothing major, but a little announcement in terms of the programming in the show and some other things that we want to do with it to begin, because I haven't really started or tried to begin to grow. And I don't mean just views and likes and all that hoorah, but to grow the concept of the content and what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to do. But I have said that my primary purpose is to educate, to elucidate, to illuminate all these eights, to get you to understand that everything out there is not all true. Everything out there is not all meant to educate you or to get you to understand or be a better listener, viewer, reader, understander. Not a word. But to be able to parse through, sift through everything out there and make good decisions for yourself based on good data, good understanding. And then lastly, I'll say just good, right, and wrong. Okay? Just good, right, and wrong. I'll leave you with this thought. We know it's wrong to kill women and children for any reason. For any reason. We've done that. Right and wrong. Stay on right and wrong. You can't go wrong. Stay on right and wrong. And let your internal moral compass, your ethical standards, your personal principles, and how you were raised, let those guide you to the right and the wrong. And you won't go wrong. We'll be back tomorrow. Nothing but love for you. We'll see you tomorrow.